and another one. So this month we read The Secret Diary of Elisabeth Leseur, or if you read it in French, Journal et Pensées de chaque jour d'Elisabeth Leseur. And it was such a... I love this one. It was such a great start for Lent. Excuse me for my voice. I'm a little tired and I've been ill, so that is why I sound like a frog. It's separated into 4 parts. So in the beginning is In Memoriam, written by her husband, Félix Leseur, and then it goes into her journal, then it goes into her resolutions, and back into her journal, and then finally a letter at the end. So I think that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hello. If you're interested in reading with me this month, we are reading The Power and the Glory by Graham Greene. You can sign up below. There is a Telegram group if you would like that extra push. And also an extra push. We meet up once a month at the end of the month via the internet, and we get to talk about the book together. So if that interests you, please sign up below. I would love to have you. Anyway, let's get back to the book review. So if you don't know the story, Elisabeth Leseur was a very devout Catholic woman. She was married to Félix Leseur, and he was an atheist, and he just never wanted to convert. And throughout their whole marriage, he did not convert. And it wasn't until her deathbed that she confessed to him that one day, thanks to all her prayers and all her suffering that she offered to God, he would convert. And he did. He even became a friar. In the beginning is just him remembering all the things that Elizabeth did throughout her life. She was a very smart woman. She knew Latin. She knew Russian and was it Greek? And she loved to read. And she wrote a lot of letters to people. She did a lot of her apostolate work behind the scenes. All these people came when she was very, very ill. All these people came to visit, thanking her for her letters and her help, and her husband had never seen them or heard from them before. And the same thing happened at her funeral. Everything she did for God, she tried to do behind the scenes. And in that sense, that's what I loved about her, is that she was a real woman. Her work for God, for the glory of God, was mainly done behind the scenes without being showy. And she's very repetitive about that in a good way, saying that she doesn't want to show the work. She doesn't want to show the suffering. She wants to show the joy that Christ gives her. But leave that suffering, offer up that suffering and whatever else she is going through to God. Back to being what it means to be a woman. She emphasizes that we need to learn as much as we can to equip ourselves in this manner. La vie de la femme, aux yeux de bien des gens, est contenue tout entière dans ces quelques années qui s'écoulent entre la 20e et la 50e année. Et pourtant, quelle force perdue représente parfois les 20 ou 30 ans, soit dans la première jeunesse, soit plus encore dans l'âge mûr et la vieillesse, demeure pour trop de femmes une période vide de leur existence. Le travail sérieux, l'activité de l'esprit, l'action d'autant plus féconde qu'elle s'appuie alors sur un jugement développé par la vie, sur une volonté fortifiée, tout cela devrait remplir cette époque de la vie et lui communiquer une sérénité, une beauté toute particulière. Mais il faut pour cela une longue préparation. Il faut pendant le temps de la jeunesse avoir pris l'habitude du travail, organiser sa vie et pris à tel point le gouvernement intérieur de soi-même qu'aucune souffrance physique, aucun de ces déchirements qui accompagnent la vieillesse ne puisse troubler votre être, à la surface tout au moins. Il faut avoir allumé au fond de nous-mêmes un si chaud foyer de sympathie et de tendresse que tous ceux qui commenceront leur course au moment où s'achève la nôtre viennent y chercher de la lumière et de la flamme. So with being a woman, it is very important for us to work on ourselves, and this work intellectually as well as spiritually must happen, and we must do it. Although we may suffer, it shouldn't come through into how we are. Several times she said in her resolutions that she wants to not show it at all, and to keep up good appearances, not in a vain way, but to show the joy more than the suffering. And there's even a quote in the end that's beware of the pride of suffering. She had many friends who were believers, but she also had a lot of friends who were atheists, very, very close friends. And that hits home to me because my closest friends are actually atheists. And I like that she mentioned many times that it's not about, you don't have to talk about God to talk about God. And for the most part, especially with atheists, it's almost useless how you live your life. And also in praying for them, the importance of prayer. She really emphasized that prayer is much more important than action. You know, we get into our heads, we think like, oh, if I could only convince this person, or if only I did this for this person, then they might convert, or they might change their mind, or they might listen to me. But in the end, it isn't up to us, right? It isn't us who will convert them. It will be God. It is God who converts. It is not you. It is not me. And I've talked about this before. It is not us, up to us. The best thing we can do for any soul is to pray for them. I know prayer can be so boring, and it just seems so passive. It doesn't have immediate results. Not all the time. Rarely does it have immediate results. But it is the most effective thing. La prière est la forme supérieure de l'action. Par elle, nous agissons directement sur Dieu, alors que l'acte extérieur s'adresse seulement à notre frère humain. Nous sommes sûrs du résultat de notre prière. Nous pouvons douter de l'effet de nos actions, à moins que ces actions ne soient, par leur intention toute surnaturelle, devenues une autre forme de prière. Prier, donc, et ne jamais nous lasser. With conversation with someone or just spending time with them, yes, it can be helpful, but then nothing is greater than prayer, and nothing is more effective because it gets to God first and then goes directly to that person. She also talked about silence and how that is so important for keeping us humble and keeping us aware of the reality of the supernatural, of God, because that's where he speaks. I love the quote, Le silence est le sûr gardien de l'humilité. Silence is a shorekeeper of humility, and that is very true. So silence is very important. Silence and prayer, so essential. I know it feels like something you've heard already, but it's so essential to hear. Like, we need to hear it all the time because we're so forgetful. It's just the same with like images, like having statues, having, you know, a cross or a rosary in your hand. That physical thing helps you remember. It helps you channel your thoughts to God. And so the silence talks about how to serve people with joy. And like I said, without showing the hardships they go through. And many times it happened to her where something physical, health-wise, was very, very difficult for her. She was enduring something very, very physical, but no one outside of her own immediate family knew what was going on in there. So they were surprised to find out later on, when she was actually very, very ill, that she was going through something. Mon Dieu, me donnerez-vous un jour, bientôt, la joie immense d'une pleine communion d'âme avec mon cher mari, d'une même foi et d'une existence toute orientée vers vous, pour lui, comme pour moi? So there is this longing, aching. I'm sure there are many. I'm very fortunate that my husband, he's the one that started, that got us into the faith, but I know many people whose spouses don't share the same faith, and it makes it very, very difficult on the marriage and on the children, and just for themselves. And so this longing of sharing the same faith and just saving the soul. And she says many times that nothing is more important than a soul, than a human soul. And if only her husband could share this joy that she has with Christ. Oh, and there was this part where I was reading it and I thought, have you ever read about or heard about a thing a saint did, and you think to yourself, well, of course you're a saint. Of course you're able to do that. There was this moment near the end of the book, I was thinking just that, Elisabeth, of course, but this is so intense. Of course you can do that. You're a saint. You're a saint. And then I read the following. Les choses de la vie surnaturelle sont devenues si étrangères à certaines gens qui sont portés à ce figure que ceux qu'ils appellent des mystiques ne sont aptes à rien dans le domaine pratique, et leur étonnement est grand lorsqu'ils voient ces mêmes mystiques capables d'initiatives hardie ou de volonté persévérante. Et, pauvres gens, l'âme qui monte très haut embrasse d'un plus puissant regard les choses terrestres, et, comme elle est maîtresse du corps qu'elle anime, ce corps obéit à son ferme commandement. Continuez à marcher en rassant le sol, oiseaux aux lourdes ailes, mais de grâce, laissez les oiseaux aux ailes rapides aller parfois du côté de l'azur, pour revenir ensuite butiner sur terre. On y respire mieux sur cette pauvre terre, quand on a, dans les hauteurs, fait provision d'air pur. She was such a smart woman. It's Lent right now, and I'm sure, there's been a few things I've failed at. We must keep going. We must keep trying. And that's what I really loved about this book, especially her resolutions part. I really liked it because it's repetitive. She says the same things. I'm going to love God, make more time for God, for prayer, make more time for silence. I'm going to talk less about myself, but also keep the dignity of my appearance. And she repeats that several times. I'm going to be as charitable as I can to those that need me, give my time, etc., etc. But when you reread the same thing over and over, the same resolutions, you think, she's human. She's just like me. And as a perfectionist, like I've said, I have trouble with this. To not feel so bad when you fail to the point where you stop trying. And this is such a wonderful book for Lent. It's still Lent. I encourage you to go pick up a copy, read it. I probably will continue to read bits of it during Lent. I wish I could have read it throughout the whole of Lent, but it's, it was for the month of February. But it's such a good reminder of what it takes to actually become a saint, and the power of prayer and the power of suffering. She talks a lot about suffering and how you should keep this suffering. Don't show it off, right? Because pride can come from suffering, but offer it to God and offer it all to Him and everything, and love. One of my favorite quotes in this book is just prier, agir, aimer. Pray, act, and love. And that's what she did. She did that as much as she could. And thanks be to God for all the prayers and suffering that she went through, because her husband actually converted after her death. She loved her husband so much, and she loved God even more, to the point where she said, God, if you want, if it needs to be, if it has to be, I give my life for my husband, for his soul. And that is such a wonderful message, because people nowadays, when we think of love, right? Love, as the world says, love is it just changes as soon as there's something you don't like about the person. But she loved her husband completely, so much so that she was willing to be so much like Christ and die for him in order to save his soul. What a better gift could a spouse give than to save the soul of her beloved. And I think I will leave you with that. And so without further ado, let's move on to the next one.